It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's so interesting.
It's interesting.
Welcome to It's So Interesting, where people talk about their work and life experience. I am George Spitzer. I have with me today Frank Goss of Sullivan and Goss, an American gallery in Santa Barbara, California. Frank is a very modest guy, but I'm going to force him to brag a little bit about the success of his gallery vis-a-vis all the other galleries in the United States. Please explain to me and everyone else the differentiation and your focus.
The focus of the gallery, it is called Sullivan, Goss, an American Gallery. We would be the only American gallery west of Santa Fe. We do that partially to differentiate ourselves, and partially we think that's one of the markets that is underrepresented on the West Coast, and so we enjoy that unique position. Unlike a lot of galleries who just take a pile of paintings in by an artist on the first of the month, and at the end of the month they take the unsold ones and give them back to him, and then take the next artist in the following month. We actually own thousands of works of art here, so people could come in today and they could buy John Singer Sargent, they could buy Colin Campbell Cooper, they could buy any of a number of the great American artists. There's a Child Hassam here on the wall right now. We have a William Merritt Chase coming up, and just to be able to show that level of art and those kinds of artists is an absolute privilege. We also show a dozen living artists, and some galleries, as I said, they escort the artist in at the beginning, the first day of the month, and out at the last day of the month. We represent those artists. Most of them we've represented more than 5 years, and some of them more than 15 years. We show their work periodically, and the period is about 24 to 30 months, and so we have an exhibit for them as they are completing the next round of work that they do. So there's just nothing at all common about what it is we do. When you compare us to all of the galleries on the West Coast, I would be relatively sure that we sell more paintings than any art gallery on the West Coast. How I think that is, we sell between 30 and 40 paintings a month, which is more than one a day. And I don't know that there are very many galleries that do that. That's a little misleading, because you'd think there were millions and millions and millions of dollars, and there certainly are millions of dollars that go through here. But oftentimes we're showing an artist in some ways whose work is very inexpensive, maybe work that might be thought of as unrehearsed and not of a vintage nature. It's a pleasure to represent those artists. We have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of exhibits this year. In fact, you and I are recording this in May. That is the month of our 30th anniversary. And so we are pleased to be here in Santa Barbara. We had a wonderful bit of support from the citizens of Santa Barbara, and I would say a little more than 50% of our sales are people who live and work in the greater Santa Barbara area. Certainly Montecito, Santa Barbara, and Goleta would be the bulk of our clients, but there are lots of clients that don't live in the West Coast and do business with us because we're an American gallery, and so there are those clients who are across the United States, and I would bet we have 20 or 30 regular clients who are international, not at all thought of as Americans with whom we do business. So that's the general distinction between Sullivan, Goss, an American Gallery, and all of the other galleries on the West Coast.
Touch a little bit about the East Coast. Are there any galleries out there specializing, and usually East Coast means New York and Boston. Are there any galleries out there that specialize in just American artists?
There are, yes.
There are.
Yeah, there are lots of them. Mm-hmm. I would guess across the nation there are maybe 10 or 12. The bulk of them, as you said, being in New York, one or two in Boston, one in Atlanta, two in Santa Fe, one in Chicago, and that's about the lot of it. And they're all a little bit like us in that they own paintings. They're not just taking the paintings in the first of the month and handing the unsold ones off at the end of the month. These are galleries that in some cases have much more inventory than we have. That's a special sort of strain and stress on galleries, because it means if somebody walks in with a painting tomorrow, let's say Edward Potast, one of the greatest American Impressionists, we have to be ready to write a check. So they walk in with a painting and out with a check. And as you might guess, that's not going to happen in most galleries most galleries in the world. So it does put us in a somewhat unique position But it also means that we get these great vintage American pieces. As a consequence, there's not a whole lot of competition on this coast, except, so if you want to buy let's say a Child Haslam, you could either look at the ones we have here, or you could get in a jet and go to New York. And probably in New York, any one visit through New York, you might be able to find 10 pieces. And so it's relatively easy to survey all of the potass that are available in America. And it all forces us all to be kind of competitive, because we don't want to have our piece that's equivalent to a piece in New York to be 20% more. The internet's ubiquitous, and everybody's capable of making a phone call or an email.
And the internet does level the playing field.
It totally levels in a really good way. It means that in the old days there might have been some provincialization where somebody would take a painting in, let's say in Bethesda, and offer it for sale at twice its value. And if there wasn't an internet and it wasn't easy to communicate with everybody, that might sell at twice its value. People don't do that today. There's always the temptation to make an extra buck. But really what we are seeing is a kind of unitization of pricing across the United States.
If you want to contact Frank, you go to the website for It's So Interesting, and there's the information.
Good. Well, thank you, George. It's a pleasure.
So interesting.
It's so interesting.
So
It's so
interesting.
interesting.
It's interesting.